enjoy our last episode of that, right, where we actually brought on our viewers to be guests. But before I even tap into that, I really want to say thank you for everyone who continue to support this our 10th episode of Gyhaffin. We bring this content or this platform actually is to allow us to have these conversations. They're very basic, right? But it's imagine yourself on a stoop and you're just chatting with your girlfriends or just with some of your friends, and you're really talking about things that really matter. The idea is to reach you and me wherever we are. So whatever our needs are, whatever our concerns are, that's what this guy thing is about. So I must say thank you so much for tuning in every week. And I know when we started, it was in the height of the lockdown. And now persons have returned to work. So I know there's challenges for some persons who are viewing during the lockdown to actually tune in because they're at work. But nevertheless, I'm very happy they look at the replay. So that's very good. So, what have y'all been up to? What do y'all do this past week or days? What is it like? What is happening in your neighborhood? What's happening in your home? What's going on? Like, talk to us. We really want to know what's happening with our viewers. But last week, we checked in with our viewers. The reason why, as persons who looked at last week's episode, you would have remembered, we did 8 episodes prior to last week, right? We did eight episodes. And what I wanted to do is before I even continue, before we even because it's us. Before we even continue, I really wanted to stop, pause, time out to check in with you, our viewers, to see how receptive you all are to the content we have been creating, we have been putting out there. Not only receptive, but how much is it resonating with you all for this COVID time? Prior to last week, we had the first episode was agriculture, we did self-care, we did education, we brought back Zoya Hyman, our psychiatrist, right? We brought back Zoya Hyman based on the request from you, our viewers, to speak about mental illness, mental and emotional illness even more. Not let's say mental and emotional self-care even more. So that was a fourth episode. Our fifth episode was on the elderly, a topic I myself never actually spoke of, and a topic I myself never actually spoke of, right? And here it is. That was different for me, but we spoke on the elderly, and we just kept going on, right? So here we are now. I really want to touch base, see how we're doing. How is everyone doing? Is everything good? Can you hear me? Just want to make sure. If you can hear me, just comment saying, oh, someone said check the audio. Okay, sound. I'm not too sure. Oh, I'm sorry. I see that now. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Let me know. Someone type comments if you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. Let me see. I'm not sure what the issue is. It's breaking up. Okay, let me check. 1 minute. Let me check. Let me check something. How is it now? Is it better now? Let me know. It's still off? Okay. It's on. That's weird because it's on my end. Is it on now? Is it off? Let me know because I can hear. I see Anita, I see Biz Markey, I see Sonia Nicholas, I see Mahalia, I see Oh, it's better now. Okay. I apologize for that. I think maybe it's the fan because it's so hot. And if I put the AC on, I have to close the doors and the lighting will be horrible. But I'm hot. So I apologize for that. Thank you so much for alerting me on that. Thank you very much. So I guess thank you very much. Um, so I guess I will reiterate, right? I will just start over. So for the past prior to last week's episode, where we checked in on our guests, what we did, we covered 8 impactful episodes. And before we continued, I really wanted to check in with our viewers, right? To see what their thoughts, to hear what their thoughts are, to find out which, how our content really is. Is it resonating with you? Is it fitting for this COVID period? Of course, there is so much to talk on. I see Ellen said it's breaking up, not better now. Is it better now? Do I speak louder? Is it better now? Because I'm looking at the comments and I'm just wanting to know if I'm better now. All right. So just wanted to touch base with our viewers before we even continue with the regular interviews. It sounds like Mike is far from you. Is it better now? Okay, it's better now. Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Check the mic. I don't know. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, I see someone say yes. There is static in the sound. Is it better now? Do I come very close? Okay, okay, perfect. Okay, I draw myself closer. I brought the camera closer. So as I was saying, I really wanted to check in with our viewers because for the first 8 episodes, I know they were very heavy, right? Even for me, especially for me personally, what I wasn't too familiar with was conversation on the elderly. I had never spoken about the elderly before, right? So I really wanted to touch base on our viewers before keep bringing on more and more guests and keep, just pushing out this content, this information out there. I really wanted to check in with each and every one of you. The reason why is this information, these gaps, they're not just about me. They're not about me, they're about us. So I wanted to make sure we're able to understand it in order for us to better cope, in order for us to better elevate our minds and elevate our lifestyle as well. So that's what we did last week. We paused and we checked in with our viewers, right? And I honestly was very, very surprised. Should I say surprised or should I say I was encouraged? I felt very, very good just to learn the feedbacks. The one viewer said one episode that did not resonate with her was the elderly. And I told her, I said, I can understand that too from my end too, because it's not that it didn't resonate with me personally. It's because I personally never had a conversation about the elderly before. Truthfully speaking, I never engaged on that level, right? But for me, it was intriguing at the same time because I was able to learn so much. And it actually it caught my curiosity to even learn more, to get more, acquainted and involved and knowledgeable based on conversation with the elderly. But nevertheless, I wrote something down, and my niece, my 1-year-old niece, she scratched on it. So one thing, one of our viewers from Nigeria, Moses said he wanted go closer to the mic. Okay, someone said go closer to the mic. Okay. So Moses from Nigeria last week he said, even the rich cries, even the wealthy people cry, just as much as we are, just as much as we do, even the rich cry. And therefore he was intrigued by Zoya Hyman very, very much intrigued by her on our talk on mental and emotional health. So he said we should bring back more persons to speak on that, right? We also had Lawrence. His audio was maybe probably like mine right now. His audio was not the best, but after I asked him to make a video and he published it in the comment section of that post of the live. So for person who didn't look at it, if you don't mind, go back to last week's episode on my page, look at the comment section. There's a video from Lawrence Bash there, and he basically stated his concerns in terms of COVID, how COVID has affected him. Lawrence is based in Guyana, right? Lawrence, yes, Sharika, Zoya is indeed amazing, right? So Lawrence, who is based in Guyana, has hemophilia. For persons who are not familiar with what hemophilia is a genetic condition. It's a blood disorder, a genetic blood disorder. So let's just make it simple. Basically, if he walks and he hits his hand, or he jumps himself anywhere, not that it will, but it can cause internal bleeding, right? So basically his blood does not clot and it's genetic. So Lawrence has the situation, his brother has it, as well as several other persons. So right now their organization, before they were accustomed to receiving funding from persons like me and you, donors, but because of persons who are laid off and money became very stringent, the organization that will receive that funding, they are basically, deprived from that fund. And what does that cause? The rippling effect of that is it basically puts them, the patients, hemophilia patients, at risk, right, of not getting access to their drugs. So that's what that causes. So you see, there are things that we never even thought of, because honestly, before Lawrence mentioned that, I actually never spoke about that, even though I have a nonprofit. I never even thought of it. So Lawrence, who has hemophilia, his access to medication, his life-threatening medication, is medication to save his life, is basically interrupted, it's threatened, it's challenged. All right. So these are the things that we also really need to talk about as well, right? Okay, see persons, Lawrence. Okay, see Lawrence is commenting as well, right? So that was Lawrence's concern, and I think I never thought about it, and I think we really need to consider that, because imagine if he doesn't have access to medication, there is a possibility that he may bleed internally and not have that drug to clot that blood. So what will happen then? He can actually bleed to death. That's how crazy this is. So we never thought of the effects of COVID in this way. That's the reason why it's so important for us to actually check in with our viewers, because what everyone is dealing with is very different from what the other is dealing with. All right. So that's that. We had also Erica. Everyone remembers Erica, or should remember Erica, from last week, from a few episodes, I think 3 episodes back. Everyone would remember Erica. Erica is based in St. Martin. She's a casino worker who, out of the 40 casino workers that were laid off in the height of COVID, right? She came on to the episode, to the show, and Erica was stressed out. She was losing her hair, and 4 children, or only her boyfriend at the time was working, and his salary was not enough to cover their expenses. Erica moved from having a normal state of living to having to eat 1 time daily. She and her boyfriend would eat 1 time daily, but because 3 of her children are younger, they aren't able to really witness, right, the impact of what is happening in their home. But to her 12-year-old son, he was able to see the changes. He saw the changes, and whatever he was witnessing in the household, it started to affect him. One thing I really appreciate with Erica and her boyfriend is they acknowledge the fact that there were changes with her 12-year-old son based on what COVID was causing, the changes in their homes. They're not able to pay their rent for 3+ months. Their food was a problem. It became a shortage of food, and the list of issues continue. Did I mention she's even losing her hair? So Erica took the step to contact the Mental Health Foundation, and this is where Zoya comes in. Zoya, right? Zoya speaks of mental health, and when Zoya was here, we actually spoke about the stigma that is affiliated with mental illness, and we need to have more conversation to normalize the talk, and for people, let people to know, right, that this is not and should not be a stigma. We need to speak more on the various aspects, the different pillars of mental illness. So again, I'm very, very appreciative of Erica, who took the step to realize her 12-year-old son was changing, and she contacted Mental Health Foundation to seek further assistance for him. Now, that does not mean that he's crazy, but she saw the effect of the whatever was happening in their household. It was affecting her son in a way that she and her boyfriend could not accommodate. So she reached out for help from the Mental Health Foundation. I really hope that is speaking volume with our viewers right now, right? So we had Anita Facey. Anita Facey is an educator. She's currently doing her PhD. Anita Facey was one of our viewers. She's currently on Now I See as well. Anita Facey was one of our viewers on the episode 3 of Gyhaffin, which was education. And we actually have Kevin, who is from Trinidad, the Higher Learning Academy, Academy of Higher Learning. He's here right now. But Anita was one of the viewers who tuned in on that episode. And as soon as the episode ended, Anita made contact with Kevin because Kevin has probably, I'm not too sure, but most definitely one of the first blended learning private schools in the Caribbean region. His school was started about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm very proud of him, where it's the blend between classroom, traditional classroom, and as well as online learning. But the manner in which his teaching is executed is just amazing. So I thought I'd bring Kevin back on right now because schools in St. Martin just reopened this week, and schools throughout the Caribbean region will be reopening very soon. And as we all know, majority of our classes will be online. So Kevin will be here with his wealth of experience. Very soon we will come on to speak on blended learning classroom, the blended learning teaching, and the transition rather from the traditional classroom setting to the online classroom, okay? So Anita Facey was viewing that. She made contact with Kevin, and at the time, Kevin was hosting a regional CXC workshop for students, CXC students who, due to COVID, were not able to be in the classroom. So Kevin hosted a free regional CXC workshop. The next thing I knew, Kevin contacted me with a video. And who was speaking in the video? It actually was Anita Facey. So Anita Facey facilitated one of those regional CXC workshops. So those are some of the things we received, the feedbacks we received from Gyhaffin. We received several others. Henrietta Duran York, who is, by the way, the minister, the mother of the current minister of Rami in St. Martin, and also the deputy prime minister. So Henrietta Duran York stated, she said it was very good to see a different platform that reaches out to the people, the needs of the people directly. And she said she's pretty sure for persons who are viewing, they will feel that they would definitely feel that every episode they would feel as though we were speaking directly to them, right? I'm stuttering and I don't know why. I think I'm thirsty, all right? So Zoya had to be on today, and I received a message. It was not fully confirmed, but I received a message. I received a message stating that she would not be able to make it. So of course, we're all crying. We're all crying for that. So of course, we're all crying for that. That Zoya would not be here to make it due to an emergency on her end. But nevertheless, thank you, Stacey Ann. I see Natalie Fikes is here. The only way to remove the stigma is to admit that we are all a bit off in some way. PTSD is real. So this is actually Natalie Fikes, who is in the US. I think it's in Atlanta. Anita Facey is writing currently. This platform is indeed relevant, timely, and thought-provoking. So thank you very much for that. So we will have Sharika. I see she's in the comment section. She will join us very soon. All right. So, and also Kevin. So before I dive into Kevin, there's a few things I just want to, this won't be a very long gap today, but there's a few things that we really want to touch base on and what is happening, especially in St. Martin. Our airport, right, was reopened on the 1st of August. The 1st of August, the airport here in St. Martin was reopened. And from since then to now, our corona cases is just mind-blowing, really and truly mind-blowing, to the point where I saw today, we're over, I think, 129 cases. And so far, we have had one local death. And before August 1st, that was not the case, so we definitely will have a conversation on that on one of our gaps next week, more than likely. There are different things we really want to touch base on as well in terms of managing personal finances. So in our coming episodes, we will touch base on that. We'll also touch base on domestic violence, because in the height of disasters, there's an increase of domestic violence within the home. And domestic violence, primarily we talk about women, men abusing women. But I want persons to know that there are also domestic violence cases where men are being abused. All right, so we definitely need to speak on that in one of our coming episodes. So there are several just things that we really need to touch base on. All right, there is in St. Martin, the SSRP, there's the employment laws, there's employers. We need to speak also on their rights during COVID. What are the rights of the employees and the employers during COVID? All right. So there's so many things to speak about. So for now, let's go to Kevin. Kevin, are you there? If you could unmute your mic, please.
Yes, I am.
Stacey said it's amazing to have Kevin back on this week, as this information will be beneficial to a lot of parents and students. And that is definitely, Stacey, you're definitely right about that. I saw about 2 weeks ago, one of my contacts on Facebook, Binta Marsden, she posted a very, very much of a concern, right? Where she stated, we are now will be transitioning to online schooling, right? And students will have to be home. So one of the concern is, who will be home with the students when parents have to return to work? That is something we definitely have to speak about. All right. So again, remember this episode is basically recapping what our viewers stated last week's episode. And we're just going to add a few points in before we even move back to our regular episodes where we have guests and we're speaking of specific topics. But I really want our viewers to know that this conversation this gap is two ways. I can't have this gap by myself. We need to do this together. And if you notice, I'm also engaging. I'm speaking a bit fast. If you notice, it's an engagement between myself and viewers and vice versa. Because as I said, we really want to know what is affecting our people. And of course, persons might say we need to speak about employment and the governing structures and what government is doing and what organizations are doing and what they aren't doing. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to ensure our people are also taken care of. We have a responsibility to ensure that we need to ensure that we deliver content that can first stimulate the mind, the mental well-being of our people. Because if we are not right within our bodies, how can we even respond to all the chaos or the beauties that are happening around us? We need to make sure that we're good. Our social welfare, well-being is taken care of in order for us to be fully present to deal with all of the other things that we're dealing with right now due to COVID. Do you agree with me? If you agree with me with what I just said, just comment and let me know if you agree with me, please. So Kevin, here in St. Martin, our school reopens in August, and I do know throughout the Caribbean region, schools open in September. And as you know, right, there's so many, like all schools practically is transitioning from the standard, the traditional classroom setting to online. Talk to us about that, and what is the right way to do this? Because there's Zoom, there is Google Meet, there's all different things, right? So are we supposed to just understand how to use Zoom and just like what we're doing right now? Or is there a different way or a specific way of how teaching should be conducted by these digital platforms?
Keoma, thank you so much again.
Can I hear you, Kevin?
Are you hearing me now?
I'm hearing.
Hello?
I cannot hear you. I don't know if our viewers can hear you. I have no clue what's wrong with the mic today. I have no clue.
Are you hearing me now, Keoma?
I cannot hear you. I know you're talking, but I personally cannot hear you. But go ahead. Maybe our viewers can hear you.
Okay, just confirm with the viewers.
Our viewers, can you let us know, please, if you're hearing Kevin? Because I have no clue what's wrong with our audio today.
Hello?
Okay. So, yes, they can hear you clearly, Kevin. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So thank you again, Keoma, for having me on Gyhaffin. And thank you so much, Stacy, for, of course, asking questions, because the more you ask questions, the more you learn how we can transition successfully to online or blended learning class structure. So again, it is something new as it pertains to the Caribbean. It has been around. Blended learning has been around for some time, but how it is delivered in particular schools may vary, all right? Because it's new, the research is new. So when you hear about blended learning, you may do some research and you would realize different adaptation of the model applied differently at different institutions. So one of the first things that I always advise is to do your own self-reflection. And when I talk about self-reflection, what are some of the pertinent questions do you need to ask persons who will now be a part of this online environment? First, who will be in this online class? Do they have the necessary equipments or technology to facilitate the online class? What psychological behaviors do students, parents, teachers, and all stakeholders involved would have to learn to have a successful online class? So these are just a few of course, the questions that you must ask. So before any online blended learning, online class could be delivered, one must first do research and ask pertinent questions. So you must, of course, acquire the data so that, of course, you would see some of the misconceptions. So you're going to have a lot of persons who will, of course, think this is what blended learning is, but it is not. So what you need to do, of course, is, of course, acquire the data by asking the right questions. And when you acquire that right questions, then, of course, you could provide clarity and design the type of model that is best suited for your school, best suited for your educators, and, of course, most importantly, best suited for the learners, all right, in that particular environment. Keoma, are you there?
Kevin, if I may ask, what exactly is blended learning for our viewers? explain that?
Sure. So blended learning is a combination of both face-to-face interaction as well as online. That is it basically in its simplest sense, but what makes it really distinct and specific, meaning that the same content or the same information that is being taught must be delivered at the same time to the same learners, whether the class is being done face-to-face or online. So that is something very important.
Very interesting. So basically, how do we use technology? Because I know, as I stated in my intro for you, educators are adapting to Zoom and various digital platforms. How should that be done? How do we even begin? How should educators even begin to, number one, classrooms is there are so many people in a classroom, so many students, right? How how do educators, like, how do they maintain that balance with them? How do they manage such an amount of students?
All right, so that's a pertinent question. So because of course, in an online environment, you have to be able to manage your class effectively. So there are certain learned behaviors or rules that teachers will develop before the start of their class. And of course, the students as well as the teachers may be aware of those rules before the start of the class. So one rule, of course, may be respect the ideas and opinion of others share in the group. Everyone's contribution is important. So the teacher is responsible for setting tone of that class. All right. And during that period, of course, he or she may have to continuously repeating it, of course, to socialize or make students become aware of it. Another way, of course, both students and teachers could, of course, become familiarized with online learning is to develop a discussion forum where every individual introduce themselves. Because yes, when we talk about education, we look at the cognitive side of it. And when I talk about the cognitive side, the ability to learn, the ability to, of course, receive the information and be able to transfer it successfully or retrieve it when needed. But we also have a social self as well, where we have emotional feelings. As human beings and persons from the Caribbean, we love to interact and socialize. That is a part of our culture. So now you're telling students this is being taken away. So we have to find another way for students to be able to express themselves. So we tend to have things like discussion forum where students will introduce themselves. They will talk a bit about who they are, what they hope to achieve during the subject or the topic that you're teaching. All right, so that is one of the ways you can bring social presence that would have been taken away from a face-to-face interaction with, of course, that face-to-face classroom experience between teacher and student.
Okay, very nice. I see Alicia Lake is here. Alicia, thank you for joining us. Alicia was one of our gaffers on our education talk, the third episode of gaffing. And Alicia is also a teacher, an educator in the public school system here in St. Martin, right? So Kevin, you mentioned the setting, starting this forum. When should this begin? Should it be before the classes start? Should it be during classes as we go along? Because even if you started in the beginning, after a while, persons will be bored. Students will be bored. They're at home.
Right. So you have two types of learning that you can, of course, in a blended learning that you can incorporate. You have asynchronous, where just like how we are having a discussion here live, we're having it in real time. We're talking. That is the first part. So you have that live setting where the teacher and the student is in the classroom at the same time, all right, using virtual reality or web conferencing. And you have asynchronous learning where now the students learn independently. So you may have activities, quizzes, tests, but of course, this is independent learning. What you would have to do as a teacher, depending on the age group, you may have to set certain penalties or certain requirements or deadlines. So you can't expect students between the ages of, let's say, teenagers, so I will group teenagers between the age of 13 to 17 to, of course, say, okay, cool, they will be able to work independently. I will need to follow up. So you need to set certain deadline dates, time frame, and as a teacher in a blended learning classroom, you are always a facilitator guiding. So from time to time, you may have a WhatsApp group like what we have, and you will follow up with students. So how is the assignment coming along? Are you guys finding any challenges? What are some of the new things you learned while doing this activity? All right, so those types of questions allow the students to reflect. All right, they also can even share some of the challenges. And then what you have now, you have their colleagues in that WhatsApp group. If you have a WhatsApp group, or if you choose to have a discussion forum, they may talk about their own personal experiences during the learning process of the particular topic or content that is being taught.
Very well. Kevin, before I read Alicia's comments, I will ask you, what if in this classroom setting, right, there are students, let's say 2 students that are generally quiet. They're on their own, don't really engage, but they get their work done, but they're not active. They're easily to be forgotten, let's say that. How does a teacher remember that student is there? How does she or he engage those students?
One of the ways I would always suggest to teachers is always before you start your class, have a survey. I always do surveys or questionnaires because when I do
every class, every single class, every day?
No, so that's not every single class, but before the start of because let's say it's a subject they're in, let's say it's English, mathematics, all right? You're specialized in a particular subject. And of course, you will have different classes with different students. All right. That may be with you for, let's say, a semester, 2 semesters, 1 academic year.
Yeah.
By asking these questions, you would begin to learn your students. You would learn them. So, of course, at least 2 students will have the same views. 3 students will have the same views. Very rare you will have just 1 student having the same view. So then you begin to group those views or those concerns that they would have discussed in that survey. And of course, you tailor your class or you group them. So that's something that, of course, we tend to do. So we group a group of students who see things in this light, or they learn this way, or they remember this way, how they see things, so that we would know how to address students. But you do have introvert students. And of course, one of the ways that we deal with it is we always, we have a bargain or a negotiation with the student. All right, we do that. So sometimes we would say, okay, can you do a presentation? Can you put the presentation together?
Okay.
And can you open the presentation and you have a colleague who supports you? Because of course, some persons have to learn confidence. And again, those are your emotional self, social presence. So those things have to be taught. Those things have to be taught. So as a teacher, you have to build confidence. It just don't happen. There will have students who will have that confidence to be the one very outspoken in the class. So you just have to know how to balance and manage your classroom in the online environment. That is why I said the survey is so important, so you can get this type of information before the class starts, so that you can tailor your instructional delivery to cater for all learners.
Perfect.
But not just, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Did I cut you? You can finish what you were saying, Kevin.
No. I just ended. So thank you so much, Keoma.
Okay, you're welcome. Before I continue, Alicia asked, but before this, she asked, how long should each session be? And I remember for that Gyhaff we had in the 3rd episode, you stated 45 minutes, right? 45 minutes. And we have here, Rhea and Alexander stated, depending, the session should last depending on the age group of the students. What is it different? What is it different in terms of approach, Kevin, on online teaching for, as Alicia said, K2, right? And the high school students. What is the difference?
K12.
No, K2. Let's say kindergarten. Kindergarten, first grade.
Right. So my specialization is from secondary, post-secondary, and tertiary. Again, from the basic knowledge, I would say as it pertains to K2 and K12, you have to use a lot of visual.
Okay.
Visuals. So they associate what they learn by a lot of visuals. So that is
Okay.
something that, of course, and with those smaller groups, you can't do the type of survey. So you'll have to do a lot of question and answer with them.
Okay.
So that, and of course, you have to document the information because they have not reached that higher level thinking as yet. At the
Okay.
K-12 or the K2, basic thing that you look for is basic knowledge and understanding. And as they go into secondary school, you begin to look for skills of comprehension, analysis, and as you go on to university, synthesis, evaluation, etc. But
Okay.
especially for K2 students, you have to use a lot of visuals, Always have to be asking questions. You have to be very clear and simple, very simple and specific. So one of the things that you realize when you open a storybook, you may not see the word flower spelled out, but you would see pictures. And of course, you'll begin to associate it with colors. And so every time, let's say a student see apple, apple for some reason gives them that understanding it means red. So if so every time you pull it out, what is this? An apple. All right, and they will be able to tell you what color is this? Red.
Very good.
So those are some of the things that they use. They use visual to associate with learning as well.
So what I gather from there, amongst all you mentioned, is for the lower grades, you need interaction. It needs to be interactive sessions.
Correct.
And visual, right? So Alicia asked, she said, Kevin, is it possible for you to share with me your blueprint on blended learning for a K2 class, including your pacing guide for all subjects? So I think that is something that you, Alicia and Kevin, you all will have to make contact behind the scenes, right? Anita Facey said, Anita is like in this every week. So Anita, thank you very much. Anita said, yes, technology allows for the teacher to cater to the different styles simultaneously within the same learning environments. What if, Kevin, what if students are frustrated? What if students are not engaging? And the teacher, well, there's not a physical presence. How should a teacher?
Right, so in a case where, of course, you don't have synchronous learning happening, you want to ensure that you use chunk size of information so you're not overwhelming the students. So students learn in small pieces, chunk size. And we know what a chunk size is because, again, the goal is not to overwhelm the students. We want to make learning meaningful. All right, meaningful. So as they learn, they should be able to associate what they learn in the classroom with the authentic environment. So you want meaningful learning to take place. So in cases like that, you divide your learning into chunk size. And what you can simply do when the student has finished learning the content or the material, of course, you can have a quiz. So remember earlier when I came on, I talked about the importance of knowing what you're assessing the students, what learning capability you want that student to have. Remember when I talk about describe, if I want a student to describe the fruits, describe a fruit to me, that doesn't mean I want that student to list or provide me with examples of different types of fruit. So I'm specific with the type of learning capability I'm looking for. So again, if the learning objective is to describe, let's say a particular, whatever it is, all right, at the end, you want to ensure that the student has that level of understanding to describe. So your assessment would be tailored around that. And that is something that we lack, I think, in our education. We tend to, students most times don't know what they're learning. They don't know what they're being assessed about. So you have students, okay, they're going through the process. Okay, today is math. Okay, today we're doing algebra. But what skill do I want you to learn at the end of this algebra class? So I think now teachers need to let students know, not at the K-12 and K2 level, but at the minute time they get into the secondary school, of course, this is something that you want them to know what I want you to learn at the end of the class.
So
Then now we're
basically,
going to make learning meaningful.
so learning basically would there become intentional. So
Correct.
students, they are no longer following just a pattern of what teachers are teaching year in and year out, but they're also engaged in the learning process, their learning
Correct.
process. So I think
Correct.
I love that approach. I very much love that approach. Kevin, Alicia asks, Kevin, what are your thoughts on K2 class starting from 7 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. daily with 2 breaks in between? Too long or unrealistic? What are your thoughts on that?
It's unreal. I mean, to each his own. Again, it comes down to acquiring the data, because for some students it may work. If that was the school schedule they were accustomed to, when they had face-to-face, it may be able to work because it's something that they were accustomed to. But if the school, this is in terms of time, that wasn't something that was implemented before, it's going to be frustrating and unrealistic. All right. Again, this is why I always say I love to acquire data. So the more you begin to acquire data, let me just share a bit of what we do when we are in our recruitment process. So we have something where I ask, what time is the best time for you to study? What time are you most active? And recently in one of our research, we realized that most of our adult learners stated that they are more active, or it's the best time for them to study at 7 p.m. So that was at 80%, and the other 20% said 6 a.m., between 6 to 7 a.m. And we have to take into consideration between 8 to 4 adults are employed between those hours. Between 4 to 6, that is the time they come home, they talk about their day with family, they have a bit of family interaction, they spend time, if they have children, with their children, going through. So of course, 7 p.m. is the best time, no distractions. Of course, the night is more calm, it's more cool, and your brain is more relaxed. So having that kind of information could, of course, tell you sometimes when is the best time to do a class with your students, and when it's not the best time to do a class with students. All right. So again, with me, data always inform, because it moves you away from trying to assume or think, okay, this is what it is. So the more you acquire the data from the learners themselves, you are better able to tailor your classroom in a way that caters for everyone, and not just your own personal thoughts or opinion, or the thoughts or opinion of a few. All right, as educators, we have our own assumptions or things that we believe, but the more we get information from the learners themselves, we can be more facilitators and guide their learning. So that's my personal views as it pertains to time.
I am very much intrigued, Kevin. I'm very much intrigued, because here it is, these are some of the things we never even thought of, so now I'm thinking, moving forward, even if we come to parents, how do parents, okay, let me see, 1 minute, let me read this quickly, before I continue what Lauren stated. Lauren said, this COVID-19 will change a lot of our lives, some good and bad. My question is, would the government provide the tools for parents, students, educators to accomplish e-learning? Examples, a computer, tablet, or phones, and internet for these devices. Some may afford, but most may not. And this is one of the things when Alicia and I spoke in preparation for our Gyhaffin education. One of the challenges, Alicia and other educators here on the island, and I spoke to several teachers throughout the Caribbean region, they stated the issues they have at home is there are no computers, no tablets to actually engage in online learning. Some students were actually using their parents' cell phone, and we know how much you can actually do on a cell phone, right? And also internet. This is one of major concerns for Alicia, I remember on that Gyhaff. Persons at home, not everyone has internet. And internet well, I'm sure in other countries they have the same concern as well, but is it affordable, right? And as I mentioned earlier, well, Anita stated here, Anita said, we have to bear in mind that the class may comprise of students with ADHD, and research has shown that the attention span of small children vary per task. Maybe what Anita is saying now can also mesh with what Alicia said due to the time. But what I wanted to ask you, Kevin, and I just got back this point, you mentioned research. Who should conduct the research to better understand their individual students? Should this be done by the teachers themselves, or should it be an effort made by the school or our education system? Because one thing
It
you will
should be an
find,
effort.
go
Right.
ahead.
So of course, data is acquired from primary source. So the primary source will of course be the students. So it therefore will be the responsibility of the teachers. Then when the teachers share this information with the principal, then they will have a bigger picture of how the school of course operates, and of course how learners learn in that environment. Again, students would learn based on the specializations or delivery of the way the teachers deliver in the classroom. All right. And of course, now this would be brought forward in a national way. So it could be shared with the Ministry of Education, etc. So it is always from the prime. So it cannot come from the
Top.
top. It always has to come from the bottom up.
Okay. You know, when we had a gap on education, you know, there's something that was mentioned. There are persons in various government departments, right? They will say, hey, you know, we want to know how many students have internet at home and how many students have tablets or whatever devices, laptops at home. And teachers will acquire that information and pass it on, but nothing becomes of it. So if nothing becomes of that, what then happened to the entire situation? You know, if there are teachers on the ground who are putting their effort, you know, in daily, day and night, because I remember during the COVID, right? I saw teachers was sending students school work at home on midnight. And there were parents, I have to mention that too, there are parents who were basically backlashing on that. I thought it was very interesting, but when we acquire this information as teachers, what if there is a reluctancy to actually do something with that information from the principal or the higher levels? What can we, I include myself in the whole here, what can educators do then with that information at that classroom level?
Of course, at the classroom level, once you have that information and you tabulate the data, of course, you provide it to your principal and your vice principal, all right? Because of course, they are the school administrators. So again, you have to lobby, you may have to negotiate as to why it is important that we tailor our classes to meet our learners' need. Remember the goal, and I always say it as an instructional designer, the goal of the educator is always to ensure learning is happening in the classroom. That is our goal. We are responsible to ensure that learning is happening at all times to, of course, the learners. That's our goal. But as I said, it will always have resistance. There will always be challenges. But as Keoma said, let's make it a community effort. Let's make it a community effort. Let's look at solutions. So sometimes you have where the government may not have the funding. They may not be full 100% in support of the new initiative. But you may have persons within your community, like business owners, different organizations who may see the bigger picture. You may even have parents who may see the bigger picture. And some of the things that you may have, which we are accustomed to, you may have a raffle, all right, to raise funds to acquire the devices. You may also write letters to certain appliance stores, technology store, and you always share the end goal benefit of course, this initiative that you want to introduce. So most times we always say the government should supply this, not thinking that, okay, it's a benefit to the community in which we live and operate in. So it should be a collective effort by the parents, the teachers, and persons within the community. It's a way of giving back. And of course, one of our goal as it looks at human development is developing our human resource. And what better way to develop it as it pertains to a collective effort with persons within our own community. So I always say change begins with us. So it starts from, I mean, the teachers, the principals, the parents, everyone has to take responsibility and accountability. It's the new norm. It's going to be with us for some time. Let's see how best we can facilitate these changes as they occur.
Very good, Kevin. To add to that, I must say, I applaud the Rotary Club here in St. Martin, because I have several Rotarians on my WhatsApp, and God darn, they flood me with this initiative. So they are the Rotary, and Elise is a part of that. We have Narissa, Anatol, and a whole bunch of other persons on the island, you know, who is a part of that initiative, where they're reaching out to individuals like myself. Elisa is laughing. They're reaching out to individuals like myself, to businesses, to anybody, to donate $100 to purchase a tablet for a student. So these are the initiatives. So Alicia, you know, I must commend her on the efforts, because she's been, as she mentioned, she's been a part of Rotary for so many years, and she's, even though she's an educator, she's still using that social platform to acquire ways of how she can benefit her profession as well. So I must commend Alicia on that. So that's also in sync very well with what you stated. It's a social responsibility. You know, we are all inclined to contribute accordingly. Irresistible, Stephanie stated, exactly agreed. We should not depend on governments to do everything. We need to learn how to be self-sufficient and teach the kids the same. Listen, I cannot agree with that even more, because I personally live with that. That's one of my statements. I can say so much about that. I personally believe we all have to identify where our power lies, where our strength lies. And once we're able to identify that, we're able to do whatever we can within our capacity. So Stephanie, I do agree with you entirely. Thank you very much for that. We have Sharika, you're here. We haven't forgotten you. Not at all. Not at all, Sharika. So it gives me like 2 minutes. I want to ask Kevin this other question. And Kevin, you just stay on when Sharika comes on, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of the things, as I mentioned twice, and I would like to have your feedback on this, Kevin. You have adult in your private school. You have, which is a blended learning school as well. I must reiterate, you have adult learners as well as students, teenagers, right, in your facility. How engaged are parents with their children's education based on your experience at your facility? You don't have to, no calling names, but I'm just curious.
No, definitely. Honestly, because we have a spirit of involvement in terms of we try as best as possible to have our parents involved. I could honestly tell you, so far, probably let's say 90% of our parents are involved. And when we talk about involvement could be simple things as calling and following up as to the progress of their students, sending us a message, you know, sharing their appreciation, gratitude. Sometimes you have parents more engaged than the students sometimes, because we keep them so engaged, because what we implemented was a classroom manager. And that classroom manager, of course, manages the activities. So you will have where just before class starts, a prompt will be sent out.
A
All right,
prompt?
again, a prompt, and that prompt will indicate to students through WhatsApp. We tend to use WhatsApp because that is where our secondary school students are. That is the medium that they use. So the adults may more use emails, but the students, if you want to get them really quickly, WhatsApp is one of the quickest way that you can get on to the students. So we tend to send a prompt to the students, of course, just the day before the class. Sometimes we may ask, the teachers may ask questions, or the classroom manager may ask questions. How is your day? How is the class going? What are some challenges that you're having? How can we better assist you? And of course, by asking those questions, they feel more involved in the classroom. And of course, we have a parent group. And in that parent group, we share a lot of information. We always tell the parents it is their responsibility to ensure that they are aware of their student's schedule. All right. Yes, they are teenagers. Yes, they have a level of independence, but of course, you always have to supervise and monitor and evaluate. It's just like in an organization. All right. You will have employees, they may be there for 5, 10 years. But if you do not monitor and evaluate, then you will not know the performance if your company is delivering good, neutral, or bad. So you must have that mechanism of always monitoring. So yes, the responsibility is on, of course, the teachers as well, but the bigger responsibility is on the parents to ensure that they are aware. Okay, they are aware that the students attended class, they are aware that they know the schedule. So even if they go out to work, of course, they should, of course, know that at 8 a.m., let me just check in the class and log out. Let me just send the classroom manager a message to see if my student is in the class or not. That responsibility is the response, because what happens if you place that responsibility on the teacher, it can become overwhelming. So sometimes a teacher may prepare a good lesson, and this is something we learned way back in 2018, where we place this responsibility on our teachers, and the task became very overwhelming. So they prepare their lesson and they're in the waiting room like this. And it happens, even today it happens, and they're in the waiting room and there's no student is there. So now we have to take the phone, we have to call, and that is going to take at least 20 to 15 minutes away from teaching time. All right, so these are some of the responsibilities we always ask our parents in our online environment. Please ensure you know the schedule. Please ensure that, of course, your child knows the schedule. Ensure that they have a study plan, or what we call a daily routine plan of the activities that they need to do for the day. All right, and follow up during the day. Please don't put this responsibility on the teachers. It becomes overwhelming and it moves you away from your main goal to ensure that learning is happening, to deal with what we call behavioral or disciplinary action.
Kevin,
So,
I could not. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So again, this is something that I will ask all parents who may be listening. Please take the responsibility to know what's happening as it pertains to your child's education. Know their schedule, know their subject teachers. These things are very important for you to know. All right, this will help you to know, okay, the type of relationships. Ask them questions. How was your class today? What did you learn? All right, just ask simple questions. And you can always liaise with the classroom manager. Well, we use a classroom manager, and of course that information is provided, but the responsibility is on the parents. All right, we want everybody to be accountable. It's the new norm, and yes, it's a bit stressful. Yes, of course it's a little difficult adjusting, but we will get there together. We can only do it together.
I agree. I agree. And I love the call to action you place on parents, and because educators are there, and they're, as Miss Van Putten stated, here in St. Martin, she stated it was something that had already started, but COVID pushed everyone directly into it. But we know, Kevin, you have been in this realm of blended learning classrooms for the past 3+ years. because that's where you started your own private school. And prior to that, you let us know what you were doing prior to that, or what all you do. I know you lectured at a university. Just tell us briefly on that so persons can understand you're not just somebody, some fly by night who is here talking to us, but you actually have the background to back it up as well.
Okay, so previously before, I was of course pursuing my master's in instructional design and technology. And of course, this was one of the research, we researched a lot of educational institutions in throughout the Caribbean. And we realized sometimes what was some of the challenges is the lack of data and monitoring and evaluating. So you will do this grand research, you will of course have all this wonderful information, but at the end, what was the monitoring and following up and evaluation? Was there a review every 3 years, every 2 years? What is the performance of the teachers? What are the performance of the students? What training is being provided to the educators? So out of that research, of course, that would have spurred me on to, of course, do my research in this type of class setting, what we call blended learning classrooms. So my research would have, of course, been in this area. Previously, before that, I would have worked with post-secondary students at a tertiary institution, and I was what you call a support tutor. So after you had your lecture, of course, deliver the content, I would have been that person who supports and manage the class. So I would have had to ensure that, okay, were students fulfilling were they doing their assignments? What were some of the ways they needed help or support? So I was a support tutor. So I provided support. So after the lecturers would have delivered the instruction to the students, I provided the support. I guided them onto that road of success as well. And again, I did an exchange in Canada at Queen's University. And there I realized how in 2013, this is in 2013, 12, which is almost 8 years ago, and blended learning was already a part of their institution. All right, so it was something already there. So, I mean, it was a new phenomenon for me, but it already existed. All right, so that is where the Caribbean now is catching up, because Canada, when I was there in 2013, already had the system at Queen's University implemented. All right, and I mean, even at secondary and K-12, blended learning was already implemented into their system of education. So you have the problem now where the Caribbean is catching up.
And we were forced into this situation. Majority of the islands were forced into the situation because of COVID. So you see, so thank you very much, Kevin. Just stick right there, because we spoke about parents adapting to this. And Sharika is indeed a parent. Sharika was on one of our gaffs a few episodes back, and Sharika was not laid off from work. However, her work, she started working from the office to home. She transitioned from the office to her home. Sharika has children and a husband, has to manage it all. And during the height of COVID and the lockdown, she would make sure, I saw it on Facebook, where she has this blackboard, this chalkboard, and she has her scheduling for her children daily. So the level of engagement and the manner in which she managed her job, right? Her job, and then her job, then I just saw a message came in just now. So it just came up on my screen. So it just threw me off a little bit there. But the manner in which Sharika managed, her job, her children every day, and her home. I mean, one night she told me she was making peach cobbler. I'm like, wait, what? So there are parents who are very much engaged. So Sharika, now that school reopened, right? How is this for you, and what is your anticipation? Can you hear me? Sharika, where are you? I lost her. I lost Sharika. 1 minute. Sharika was just here, and I seem to have lost her. One minute. Okay, so while I think, well, I lost Sharika. So Kevin, as we wait for her, let's just continue talking a bit. You know, let me mention this while I wait for Sharika. I lost her. She was here waiting to join, but I don't know. So I apologize for that to our viewers. But let me mention this also. You know, during 2 days ago here in St. Martin, because as you would have known, our viewers know, we spoke heavily also on entrepreneurship. We spoke heavily on the transition of persons who were laid off and persons like Erica. Then we had Dominique Hodge, who after 1 week, she said, listen, I have to figure this out. I have to do something, right? So Dominique started a popsicle company as basically a pop-up shop. So it's not every day, but ever so often she will do a pop-up business, right? So 2 days ago, I think it's 2 days ago, NRPB, they launched, which is the Recovery Bureau. Hey, Sharika.
Hi.
Let me just mention it. I was like, where did she go? So thank you.
You know, the internet is so unpredictable, so.
Oh my God. So you see what educators are talking about. These are the issues.
Yes.
A perfect example of it. But let me just mention, so we will talk on this next week, on next week episodes of Gyhaffin, right? But there is a very, very, very good opportunity that came about, was launched 2 days ago for small businesses, for new and existing businesses, where you can, it's a part grant, part loan, all right? Part grant, part loan of the maximum $150,000 US. So credits, and we all call it Q credits. I was one until Excel corrected me. So credits is one of the facilitators. So for persons, just go on Excel page, and there's also an article in the newspaper as well. Next week we'll speak more on those opportunities that exist. All right. So Sharika is back here now. Sharika, I was saying, well, Kevin was saying last, in that draft, there was one big problem with the incident about it. So someone said, Anita, Velasquez said, that is one big problem with internet and power outage, and I agree with that entirely. And as far as that was a perfect example for with Sharika just now. And I saw she commented saying back in the incident. So as you see, for educators or persons in offices, education offices, you know these will definitely be issues that we will face here and even from the region as well. Sharika, on the episode of Gyhaff where you were a guest, you mentioned, you know, you weren't laid off, but your work status transition from the office to your home. And yes, then you are managing your children's education every day, as well as maintaining your home and a husband. Now that school and your husband, now that school has reopened, what has it been like for the past few days? And what do you anticipate?
Okay, I think I'm hearing you're a little, your volume is a little low on my end. I don't know if it's me.
The volume is a little low on your end?
Yes. I think I heard your question.
I probably can hear you, so I have no clue what's going on with the volume today.
Okay, so I think your question was, how am I managing since school started?
If you can hear Sharika, just comment, please.
Okay, I think I heard your question, so I'm going to try to answer it.
I myself cannot hear you, Sharika. But go ahead. Go ahead. It's fine. Just go ahead.
They cannot hear me, or they can hear me? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Okay, so it has been quite a challenge for me getting back into the gist of everything. But like I told you, Keoma, I think it was today, it's taking another adjustment. So yes, at the first, can you hear me well? Are you hearing me? Get back into the gist of everything. But like I told you, Keoma, I think it was okay, they're hearing me. Yeah, so it has been quite an adjustment once again. The problem, it's a challenge for me is I have 3 children. They're all different ages, and their schooling starts at the same time, and my job starts at the same time too. So for my daughter, she's in high school now. She's a little more independent, but I just want to make sure that she's comfortable with online school. But for my son, who's in elementary school, he doesn't quite, yes, he's a little tech savvy, but you still want to be there to assist the teacher to make sure that he's focused when it comes to school. So that has been the challenge for me, dividing myself into working at home and being an assistant teacher for my high schooler and my elementary school and my toddler. So that has been the challenge still. So I have to readjust you were talking about that I made the schedule on my chalkboard. That has to be readjusted now because I'm dealing with high school now and it's a completely new ball game. My internet is being quite difficult today.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. How do you anticipate managing now that the students are actually back at school? And as you stated, your job, your work starts at the same time school starts. How do you anticipate managing all of that? How do you anticipate supporting your children as you did during the lockdown and even before, now that everything will be online?
The difficult thing for me is, like I said, dividing myself into basically 4. I think that it's a matter of having an understanding employer. So since this is something new for everyone, we need everybody involved to have some patience. We need our employers to have some patience. We need the school to have patience, the teachers and the parents, because at the end of the day, we have our children, which are the students. They're the ones going through this very confusing time when it comes to school. They're still not fully understanding why they just can't go back to school.
Okay. And how do you think we can even begin to allow our children to understand this new concept?
Communication and hearing them out, because they're the ones that really, we see them as little people, so we don't think they have much to say, but if we sit down and have that communication with them, then maybe we would get it. And I think that that's something, like Kevin was talking about research. Yes, it comes from the schools, it comes from the parents, but I think we have to have a sit down with the children too, no matter their age level. Care teams in schools are super important. Care teams are able to somehow get information that maybe a parent is not able to get. And all of that information, like Kevin said, get that research, get it from the source, get the basis put together. That is all important. It's hard, but it has to get done. The problem is, like Alicia was saying, we have kindergarten students, we have daycares that are open, we have high school students, elementary school students. We have students that learn different ways, visual learners, different type of learning capabilities. It's super hard. So listen, I'm happy Kevin is here to try to get us to connect the dots together, but it's gonna be hard for everybody. And I must commend though, not to distract from what you just asked, I must commend the schools on St. Martin, because so far they have been doing their utmost best. They have had the most patience from what I've seen so far in this COVID situation. I think that the schools, like you were saying, we cannot rely on government for everything. And I don't think the schools are doing that anymore.
Okay, very good.
Because we have realized that they ask for certain information, and it's not to point fingers at anyone, because I know that their hands are full, two government's hands are full, but they're asking for the information. And with the information that they're asking for, I think that we should hold on to it for ourselves and seek different resources. Like you talked about the Rotary Club. This morning, I got a memo from the Coffee Lounge, They're giving, they're using their facilities to help students that don't have devices or internet at home. So as a community,
very nice.
Yeah, as a community, we just need to figure it out ourselves.
That is, I love that. I love that collective effort from Coffee Lounge. I think that is very, very good. I think because that's their space is usually used for, I've seen students there as well. I've seen persons meet there for meetings. I've utilized their facility many times. So that is very good. So cheers to Coffee Lounge for that initiative. Kudos to that. For parents who are working, as I mentioned twice earlier, Binta Marsden, and I will call her name because she made a public post. Her concern was, and I think still is, now there's online schooling. Children has to be at home, but there are parents who have to leave and go to the office to work. What do you think can happen? How do you think that should be managed?
I think that, like I said before, we need to have some employers that are a little understanding when it comes to this situation, because I remember for my son's orientation this week, there was a little girl and she was just home with her siblings. And the siblings were there trying to figure out, okay, how do we get this Zoom to work? They were trying to figure out how to change the name on the Zoom to put the name of the sibling. It wasn't anything pleasant to see. I felt really bad about it. But if the employers had given the parents the opportunity to assist their child, especially for orientation, then that would have been a solution. I know some employers, though, they did allow their staff members to bring their child to work. But then, yeah, but with the COVID, we're trying to protect them.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's
especially
hard.
with the second wave right now.
Yeah, the second wave it's double the headache for us. It's really bad. So I think it becomes an opportunity for employers not to penalize their employees for having to be assistant teachers in these cases, because we have little ones that can't rely on their older siblings, or maybe they don't have older siblings, so you're trying to get a neighbor or a friend or a grandparent or somebody to help because you have to work.
You know, Sharika, across the board, this is me just being very unbiased. Across the board, it's a very uprooting situation for parents, for everybody, for parents, educators, government, and even the businesses. Because to rebut what you just stated, you know, it would have been good to have a bit more understanding from employers. But the reality is, there's a business to conduct. A business operation is at stake as well. So how do we even begin to meet, you know, halfway? How do we even do that? And what I want to also ask, now even before I ask, they are parents. This is me being very honest, very fair. They are parents who do not have the patience with children, you know, and they rely heavily on having the teachers' involvement with their children when they go to school. They have a level of comfort with their teachers, with their children teachers. Now that is no longer the case physically, what would you say to parents who have no patience, who don't even understand how to even begin to teach their children the right way?
Yeah, this is the opportunity for the parents to step up. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I know psychologically everyone is being affected by this situation. But at the end of the day, we're the parents and we need to love our children enough to step up and do what we have to do for their benefit. So I know there are some parents, they struggle with this new opportunity of relying on the internet and e-learning because they just don't know, they're not tech savvy. But some schools, they are providing the opportunity for training. I've seen it, I've went to 2 so far. They're providing training and I think parents should take the opportunity to get the proper training now because this is our new normal. We have to get used to this reliance on internet, at least for the moment, and then for the future, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So we just need to, as parents, keep upgrading ourselves, come with the time, go with the flow, but go with the times and make ourselves not surprised by any changes. And if we do have any changes, accept them and better ourselves so that we can be better for our children.
I agree with that. I think it's impressive that schools are even offering trainings for parents. I think that is very impressive because it's needed as much as it's needed for educators. It is indeed needed for parents. What would you, now that students will be at home, how do you look at education now as not even opposed to, but I personally am thinking now, so even more, Sharika, and for our viewers as well, education should be looked at even more holistically, not even to only rely on the classroom teachings, but to use this opportunity, seeing as our children will be home, to capitalize on creating a broad-based knowledge, broad-based education. I have a niece, she's 10 years old. I encourage my brother to buy newspapers for her so she can read and be even more aware of what's happening in our own environment. Because the reality is, while we may want to teach our children every single thing, we do not have the time to do so. So if we can bridge these gaps by providing the information, the knowledge, like newspaper is one of them, I think that too could assist in, in really fulfilling that need. What would our viewers say about that? Not just newspaper alone, of course, but there are other means as well. Sharika, what do you say about that?
That is true. This is an opportunity for us to spend more time with our children. It's very true what you're saying, broad-based education. It doesn't really come, we need to stop relying on the schools and the teachers to educate our children. But the problem is, Keoma, we have a lot of parents that are going through psychological problems and they don't have the patience because everyone's situation is different. There's financial difficulties at home, PSD, that's what they call it, going on.
Yeah.
We have children that are living in abusive situations at home, so they're not going to ever get the support that they need. So
you are right. This is why I really wanted Zoya on this live today. But I would excuse, but she did warn me that there's a possibility that she would not have been available, and I had to wait, but in the end she was not available. So we will definitely follow up. And Anita Velasquez said, I find my daughter prefers ebooks or reading online where I prefer a book. So Anita Velasquez said, I find my daughter prefers ebooks or reading online whereas she, the mother, Anita, prefers an actual book. So Anita, I think that is very commendable of you. Reason why is you're paying attention to the learning patterns of your daughter. I think that is very good because it allows you to be even more aware of her preferences. So I really love that, Anita, very much so. What do you think, Sharika?
I think we need to use whatever educational tool that's available for our students. So my children also, my children like both. They like books and they like ebooks. But we have to be a little cautious with those ebooks because they might get tempted to go on games instead of reading. So we cannot get, I think it's okay, but I think that we should also have them realize the importance of books. Because because in case there's no internet, they need to be okay with picking up a book. It's okay.
I agree with that too. I do agree with that too. You know, I just think we're in very much of a transition time, and I grieve for persons who now, parents, just people in general, who now have to deal and adopt with this new reality of having their children at home, because having their children at school sometimes is an escape for the parents as well. You know, they have that time to relax and to unwind. And here it is 24/7. The children will be in their home, in the home. So it brings added pressure. And also to the point where parents, there's so many parents who are laid off from work. There's added frustration. You know, there's relationship issues. There's all different things that persons are facing right now. And on top of all of that, they have to manage their children's education themselves from home. You know, so it really is a lot. So I must applaud parents or people out there, you know, for the fact that you're able to be so resilient. And I know a lot of us need someone to talk to, regardless of where you are. Go ahead.
But I think that as parents, we need healthy distractions too. So in the midst of all this, the demands of being an assistant teacher, the personal struggles with work, money, we need some healthy distractions also, so that we don't get too frustrated when it comes to helping our kids.
I want to ask you what are some healthy distractions, but I want to ask Kevin, seeing that he has this online school. Kevin, in the height of COVID, what are some of the reactions you've been getting from parents, in terms, maybe some of the parents from your students who are laid off? How are they managing? Don't tell me I lost Kevin now too.
No, he's on mute.
In terms of our institution, I mean, I thank God that they still have their jobs. So most of the secondary school students, we just had one student, of course, that could not have been with us the way they were before in our full-time classes, because their parents would have lost their job. But most of our parents are still employed. So we thank God for that. So but we had a lot of our adults who, of course, would have lost their jobs. So, of course, we had a large dropout or discontinuing group of students for our adults, because now it moved from a want to a necessity. All right. So while education, some may consider it a necessity, it still falls within the bracket of something more secondary. Food, water, shelter, healthcare, transportation, those are the most important things for human survival. So their focus would have been in those areas. So of course they may start back with us in September, but our adult population, of course, there was a large drop out there, but we had an increase in our student population. Secondary student population.
That is interesting, the increase. But let's go back to Sharika. You mentioned healthy distractions. What are some of the healthy distractions parents can engage in your opinion?
Healthy distractions could be simple to something not too simple. Get involved in music if it makes you happy. Something as simple as, music. Remember Erica from the segment I was in? She used music as a healthy distraction for her family. So what she did, she would put on some music and dance around with the students.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, have date night with your spouse or your significant other away from the kids if you can. It doesn't have to involve money. Go for walks with your children You do little simple things that wouldn't take that pressure off, that worry off the daily lives. If you want to go back to school and you could afford it, if not, there's some free classes available. Sign up for those to stimulate your mind and get your mind off of the worries of being an assistant teacher or work. Things like that you could do to start cooking. Agriculture, that's a thing now. I have my garden.
Yes.
Mhm.
And agriculture was our first gap. We spoke on agriculture. That was our very first gap. But I do agree with you, and we mentioned this. I mentioned this in one of our previous episodes. The same episode with you and Erica as well. Erica, as you mentioned, and I reiterate now, Erica would dance around in their home with her children. You know, she would take them out as well. And I think the same thing for persons who live in communities where there are parks, you know, where there's ice cream for even $1. You know, Burger King and McDonald's sell ice cream for $1. And don't think about the fact that, oh my God, things are so bad with me. Just be present and engage and indulge in that moment with your family, because the experience is what we should be willing to create. It's an look about the experience, the time you're spending with your loved ones. And even though things may be, as some persons would say, financially brown, right? We can still find things to do. And as Sharika said, healthy distractions. Lauren said, I think there will have to be different fixes to this problem. Examples, those who have the means to be online do that via e-learning. And those who have that and those that have learning disabilities are not having the means to have a device or internet, might have to do rotation and social distancing in school. This will be the decade of e-learning and information technology. It will be interesting to see how each country handles it locally and collectively. That was a handful, Lawrence, but you are so right. You know,
He's correct. He's correct.
Sorry?
He's correct. He's correct. And what our school is trying to incorporate, because I also work at a secondary school. So Kevin, I'm gonna talk to you later.
Great.
What we're trying to do our blended classes too. So we would have one half come into school and then the other half would be at home, and then we would take that. What we're trying to do also, with permission, students that don't have the ability to have internet or computer, they would come to school to learn, but it cannot be a big group. It needs to be a little group so that we can adhere to the social distancing regulations.
Okay.
So yes, it is interesting to see how we're going to cope with this, but everything that we do, we need to ask permission from government for, but we need to be creative, because at the end of the day, it's the students that will suffer if we don't get it together.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. You know, it's so interesting how quickly the time goes. We're on this call for like an hour and 30 something minutes. We're on this call for. Let me just add before we round things up, this is why I enjoy doing this. Everything I've done over the past years culminates to this one platform. I'm able to speak on various topics, and I'm able to engage with so many persons, and not just about what I want, but it's basically to ensure that whatever we're discussing we're reaching persons' needs. This is what we want to hear, So I'm very, very appreciative of the diversity in the content and the receptiveness we have been receiving from our viewers. Sharika, I know you mentioned also what your thoughts are on Gyhaffin before, and Kevin as well. And I am really appreciative of the fact that persons are finding value in the content. And for persons who have not reached out to us as yet, let us know what their thoughts are, what they think we should improve on. And remember, it's all a learning process for me even. We're growing and we're expanding as well. All right. So we definitely want to make sure we remain relevant and we're able to reach each and every person wherever you are. So we are listening. We want to continue to listen and know that it's not about us. Not about me, it's about us collectively, the whole. Sharika, in closing, until we talk again, what would be your words to parents? There are parents, as you stated yourself, there are parents who were laid off. There are parents who, there are some persons who are actually still working, but they had a reduce in their salary, right? There are parents who have no patience with their children, but now they have to manage that, right? At home with their children. There are parents who are always engaged, like Anita stated, she understands the preference, as insignificant as it may appear. I love the fact that she's engaged with her children. And I know for sure there are so many other parents who are. I think also, based on what Lauren said, it will be interesting to see how each country handles it locally and collectively. Because I know in other countries in the Caribbean, what happened to those persons who live in villages that sometimes they feel forgotten, you know? I mean, I think in St. Martin, we are so privileged, even though there's always needs for improvement, you know? But how do we end this right now?
Well, for the parents, I simply want to say, do not let life dictate who you are as a person. You need to somehow figure out how to take hold of life, and don't let life take hold of you. And this too will pass. We're learning, we're growing, and we will make it. And I think that we need to, like I said in the other episode that I was a part of, we need to go back community-based. It takes a village to raise a child. That's what we've been raised up hearing. Let's try to go back to that, and I think we're going to be okay. So don't give up, parents. Don't give up. It's going to be okay. We need to face our new reality. We need to go with it, and we need to make the best out of it. And our children, they're the ones that need us. So we have to be strong. I know it's hard, but we have to be strong. And it's okay that if you're stressed out and you need to go to the Mental Health Foundation, because you have to talk it out. Don't keep it in. Talk about it. And then you're gonna get that ease that you need out of this situation. It's not easy, but it's going to get easier eventually.
Very good. I think also to add to that, if I can just quickly, you know, there are times where, again, there's a stigma associated with Mental Health Foundation. In St. Martin, we have the Mental Health Foundation, but our other Caribbean territories, I'm pretty sure, has that facility as well. So we really want to encourage our people, not just parents, but our people, to just find someone to speak to, someone you're confident, you know, comfortable, and you find confidence in, to speak to that person. They may not tell you what you want to hear, and that is fine too, right? Sometimes all we need is just to have someone to listen to us. Because sometimes I just want to just talk and I don't want to hear a response, but there are times where I want to be validated. I want to hear, okay, what you're doing is good, or maybe you should do it this way. You know what I mean? And to be receptive. Affirmation. Thank you. You're right. You know, we need that affirmation. We need that level of, hey, to hold me accountable. But we need to, in order for us to get to that point, that place, we need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, because it takes vulnerability to shed. It takes vulnerability for us to bear ourselves naked before somebody. It does not mean that you have to tell all your personal business, but you just need someone to talk to. And there are some parents, I can only imagine the frustration, but think about your children. If you're dealing with something, fix it. Don't allow it to, don't lash out on your children, because that too will hamper your children. And then it becomes even more of a chaos in the household. All right.
And they're innocent. They're really innocent.
Yeah.
The whole COVID situation is not their fault.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't be the punching bag of frustration.
Yeah. Yeah. And COVID situation is COVID, being laid off, the frustration across the board. I mean, we really have to be realistic in the manner in which we manage ourselves, our thought process, our habits, our actions. We really have to be responsive, responsible, accountable. We really and truly have to. And as Sharika said, we can come collectively. You know, we can come together and have these conversations amongst ourselves, even if it's not in person, but like what we're doing right now amongst friends, we can definitely do that. Kevin, in closing, what would you say to educators? You know, you're the educator here. What would you say to educators who are back in the classroom right now, to students and to parents from an educator perspective?
You're on mute.
Oh, he's on mute.
Oh, sorry about that, ladies. So my contribution, of course, would be we need to be open-minded about this change that is happening. And of course, with change, we have to be able to adapt. So we need to take the necessary information, and with that information, we make the relevant changes. So it's important that we have an open mindset about learning this new paradigm shift. So we have to be open about it. Parents, teachers, principals, stakeholders, we have to be open, have an open mind about it. And of course, as time goes along, it becomes easier. All right. So many persons, older educators, persons who have been in the field for over 30 years plus, during that time, you would have seen education continuously evolve. You would have seen the technology evolve. You would have seen the content evolve. You would have seen the delivery. So with this new change, we as well must be able to adapt and change as well. So change is inevitable. So we just have to be able to adapt and be open-minded about the change and how, of course, we would adapt to those changes when they happen.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was a very good rundown. Sharika, in closing, and Kevin, in closing, I must say thank you so much for being a part of Gyhaffin once again. And your content, your expertise, your patience, you know, and your willingness to share and to engage. It means not just to me for you to grace our presence, but also for our viewers. The conversation we have, the gaps we have, they're very vital. And as I keep saying during this conversation, you know, here we want to reach our people where they are, where their needs are. So I'm pretty sure this is a major need. So Lawrence said, nice work today from you and your guests. Live feeds are funny because we cannot edit things. Left Lawrence, we can't edit them. Today was definitely some kind of mishaps here with my audio. The thing is, I'm actually using my phone, and I'm using my phone on my laptop, you know, so I think that's also is an issue. At Sharika, you have the internet issue. Anita said, thank you all very much. Very informative. Thank you. Anita, thank you so much as well. This is Anita Vasquez. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging. All of our viewers, thank you so much. And next week, remember, last week episode, we checked in with our viewers. This week episode, we recapped what our viewers said, and this is responding to what our viewers stated. We needed Zoya Hyman to be on this platform today, but unfortunately she couldn't make it. So we will definitely make up for persons like Moses in Nigeria who requested for Zoya, but we will definitely have more of this. And next week we will carry on with our regular Gyhaff, okay? In terms, not that this isn't regular, right? Not that this isn't regular, but we will have persons on where we can interview and have a conversation. All right. So thank you so much for everyone. Have a very good Thursday evening. A very good weekend. Hey, Henrietta. Let me mention this. Let me brag a little bit before we get off. Henrietta Durant York Illich said, great work again, Lady K. Keep it up. The dress, Anita Facey said the content today was very insightful and relevant. The dress I'm wearing was sewed by my mother. My mother passed away this year, would be 9 years ago. But this dress that I'm wearing was actually sewed by her. She made this dress. I still wear pieces of clothing that she made for me, but this was actually hers. So this is one of her dresses that she made for herself actually, and it's now mine. I just thought I'd say that, right? So thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening and see you next week. Okay. You all know I struggle every week with this thing. Every single week I struggle with this thing. I'm telling
It's gonna
you.
get better. It's okay.
It's getting back to get off of it. I struggle with this every week and it does not get better. I don't know. My sister's probably laughing at me right now.
Oh my gosh. Is she there? She's in the room?
No, she left.
Oh, she left. Oh,
Why do you think I have these mishaps today? She left. She left. Persons are having this behind the scenes chat now, right? But our viewers are still on, I can tell you.
yeah.
But yeah, I can do that. Okay, let me end the live. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Bye.